Welcome back, my guys. Today I have got a special one for you, which is all about thyroid function and thyroid deployment. So I will definitely go into details of how the thyroid works, give you the basics so you've got a full understanding of how the thyroid function may affect you within your contest prep and what you may actually need to look out for, especially if you're a natural athlete or an assisted athlete, and how I personally feel it should be approached so that you are supporting your thyroid production, shall we say, and we are not venturing into levels of thyroid that are going to be counterproductive for your goals, whether it's trying to build muscle or trying to lose body fat. And this is the back of some of the advice I have seen going on the internet as of late, and some of the mistakes that I have seen people make when it comes to either seizing thyroid medication after a prep or simply overusing thyroid meds and putting themselves in a hypothyroid state, hyperthyroid state, shall we say, which is not really going to lend itself to the best of outcomes when it comes to trying to either build muscle or retain muscle in a contest prep. So today is going to be all about thyroid and thyroid deployment and use, and what considerations you should be taking within your journey, both as an assisted athlete and as a natural athlete. Right, so let's get into the basics of thyroid function and thyroid hormone. The thyroid produces two hormones. One is T4 and one is T3. The way your body works, once it secretes T4, it then turns into T3 through the process of deiodinization. You have to understand that your body will produce T4 that converts then into T3. There's multiple things that may actually affect your thyroid conversion, and some of the things that we do within bodybuilding may actually prevent proper conversion of thyroid, which will then impact your metabolism and the body's functions alongside of that. Right guys, so the T4 is converted into T3, and the T3 that is derived from the T4 is actually going to directly affect pretty much all of the cells and tissues within your body. Now, putting it simply, the T4 and T3, your thyroid function, is going to directly impact your metabolism. This is where you have to understand that your thyroid function is what regulates the speed at which your body cells actually work. So in a contest prep, for example, your thyroid function will actually slow down as your body weight comes down, and as your actual food comes down, naturally your thyroid function actually slows down as you go through a prep. Now, small little things that you can actually implement to prevent a big hit when it comes to your thyroid function is slowing down your rate of loss and implementing regular diet breaks and regular deloads. The faster the rate of loss, the harsher the deficit, the more of a hit your thyroid function will actually take. So your metabolism will actually slow down. As your metabolism slows down, you will be forced to then basically eat less and move more to continue to see progression with fat loss. That is something we all want to avoid as athletes. We never want to get to a point where we crush our hormones through a harsh deficit and through simply overdoing the calorie deficit through either undereating or creating a large deficit through taking away too much food or simply overdoing the cardio. Now, on the other hand, if you are supplementing with thyroid and you crank up your thyroid to the point where it's functioning much faster than normal, then you will have hyperthyroidism. High levels of T3 are actually going to be pretty catabolic for you, which is not really a place you want to be within a contest prep setting or an off-season setting. And this is where it's extremely important that you are doing blood work if you are supplementing with thyroid, with T4 and T3, and accurately dosing your T4 and T3 through blood work. Now, we all have a rough estimate and an idea of what replacement thyroid should look like, and I will get into that in a little bit. However, Everyone has different conversion rates of T4 and T3, just as everyone does convert a different amount of testosterone from TRT doses, right? Some people might put themselves within range of 100 milligrams of testosterone. Some people may need 250 milligrams of testosterone to yield the same dosage, the same amount of testosterone within the body. The same applies when it comes to thyroid deployment. So you have to take consideration that what dose you may need to keep you in the HRT levels, so hormone replacement levels, may vary. In an ideal world, the way thyroid deployment should be done within a contest prep setting is to simply keep you in mid to upper range of your natural thyroid function to maintain a healthy metabolism as you are going through a contest prep. This will prevent you from having to drop your calories excessively. It will actually, again, improve and hold your metabolism in a healthy spot. In essence, you'll feel better, and it will improve your ability to continue with fat loss without having to do excessive cardio or drop the calories below a range where it will be pretty comfortable for you to do so. Now, what happens if you dose your thyroid too high? You will notice a very, very big increase in your resting heart rate. Now, secondly, you may actually notice diarrhea. That's a couple of symptoms that you will notice alongside of actual higher bouts of fatigue. Generally, you should never really want to get to that spot, and there will be a telltale sign that your coach will be able to see if you are venturing to that place. However, it's always the best to actually work off blood work, because sometimes your resting heart rate may be elevated down to something else, and then sometimes the term can apply where it's causation, not correlation, right? Where something else may impact it and you may actually think that your thyroid dosage is wrong, whereas in fact the blood work may actually show different. So always outside of caution, and always try to work off your blood work. Now, if you do notice that your resting heart rate is extremely high, you're having trouble to sleep, again, that might actually be fatigue. However, if you are losing muscle mass and strength and you are dosing on the higher side of thyroid, you may actually want to bring that dose down, especially if your T3 is higher. Then I will give you some reference and ranges that I definitely think people should use. But again, that's some telltale signs that you may actually have in place if fatigue management is correct and you're not simply tired or something else is causing that. Now, on the other hand, when you are hypothyroid, so when you experience hypothyroidism, when your actual thyroid levels are low, and you will probably experience that as a natural athlete towards the latter end of prep, especially if your prep has potentially been mismanaged or your deficit has been too harsh, you may actually notice these symptoms where you will be constantly cold, especially your hands. Again, bouts of fatigue, you will feel very weak in general, and you will feel like you have no get up and go, and energy levels will definitely be on the lower side. Lowering of resting heart rate is a huge sign as well. If all of a sudden your resting heart rate drops, your body temperature drops, and you see constipation, that actually may be signs of your thyroid being too low. So these are most of the signs that you may need to look out for if you are either overshooting your thyroid dosing or undershooting. So what can go wrong within extended periods of dieting or yo-yo dieting, or even the process of someone coming out of a show and then pulling back the calories when the thyroid isn't recovered quite fully? And that's something I've seen recently with many people. Now, if you are coming out of a show and you are trying to recover your thyroid hormones, you need to get your calories up and you need to get your body weight up. The biggest mistake for anyone trying to recover the thyroid is lowering the calories post-show and then trying to either pull back or go into almost a maintenance. If you are looking to improve your health post-show and you are looking to recover after extended periods of dieting, whether you are assisted or natural, you need to get in a consistent calorie surplus and you need to get your body weight up. That is the quickest and most efficient way to actually get your body back in check and get your thyroid function back to a normal state. If you are using exogenous thyroid, or if you have used exogenous thyroid during a prep, if you then cease the use of the exogenous thyroid and you are not actively adding calories, especially specifically carbohydrates, and you are potentially under eating and then overcompensating in single meals, that is sure one way to drive not only insulin resistance, but also impact your thyroid function, where you will simply not see thyroid recovery happen. And this is what I see most common with people coming out of a contest prep and the mistakes that the people make when it comes to thyroid function and actual thyroid use, or shall we say, seizing the thyroid use after a prep when they have used it. Now, within natural athletes, this is exactly where post-show is extremely important, because when you are a natural athlete, you cannot use T3 and T4 to mitigate hypothyroidism. It will happen either way. Your thyroid function will slow down. You can use supplements like iodine, and you can prevent it to a degree through a slower rate of loss, like I mentioned earlier, and regular diet breaks and managing fatigue. However, it's inevitable that you will experience hypothyroidism, which is underactive thyroid. Now, this is where not enough thyroxine is actually produced by the body, down to either your body weight being low or simply underfeeding. That is what you have to watch out for, and these are the mistakes I don't want any of you to make, because I have seen a lot of athletes, as of late, make these mistakes. They come out of a show, they was using exogenous thyroid, which put them in range, so they wasn't actually using more thyroid than needed, and then they come out of a show, they bring the calories down, they potentially, probably overcompensate on some meals and then undereat across days or weeks, and then expect the thyroid to actually recover. It just won't happen. You will only cause more harm than good. You need to stay in a consistent small surplus across the day, across weeks, and make sure that you're managing fatigue correctly, and make sure that you are reverse dieting correctly as well. Make note of that if you have been in a similar situation, both as an assisted or a natural athlete. Now, hyperthyroidism, obviously overactive thyroid, that is where either your body produces too much thyroxine or you are simply overusing the thyroid. I want to go in a little bit more detail what happens when you actually overdo the T3 and T4. Obviously, T3 and T4 will increase your basal metabolic rate. In essence and in short, it will make all of the cells in your body work harder. So what I want you to look out for is a little bit of a checklist, and this may be very useful to you if you do not have blood work available to you and you are using exogenous thyroid. So first, body temperature will rise. If you are using too much thyroid at the same time, your body temperature may actually decrease if you are in a hypothyroid state, if you're a natural athlete and you're not able to use T3 and T4. Faster pulse and stronger heartbeat. Generally, I know when my thyroid dose is probably too high is when I go to bed and I can hear my heart thumping. That's if I'm not having anxiety or just generally being tired. So do not put two and two together. Food is used up more quickly as the energy stored in the liver and muscle is being broken down. So if you do find yourself in an off-season setting, for example, where you are having to have a ton of food, and I've had that with a lot of clients coming out of the show, where we have been having to basically pull the thyroid away because there was eating so much food and the body was burning through it so much, that is when we just seize the use completely, and that is when the body's pretty much recovered. So generally, if you notice that your food is used up pretty quickly and you're not able to see that body weight go up and you are eating a ton of food, it might be actually time to remove exogenous thyroid, especially if you're using T3 and T4 combination. The standard that you should all know, the brain matures in children, so they do need healthy thyroid function. Growth is actually promoted in children, and this is where, to a degree, having the right dose of thyroid in a prep, for example, even an off-season, will promote protein turnover. So you do need to have a healthy balance there. Activation of the nervous system leads to improved concentration and faster reflexes. So again, potential training performance could even be better with healthy thyroid function. This is where I want to go down the path of how your thyroid may be affected in a diet phase. Down regulation of your thyroid is literally part of the process as your body weight comes down and as your calories come down. One of the main functions of your thyroid is to produce hormones that actually help regulate the body's metabolism. So the process that turns food into energy. Now, as you diet down, many of the body's functions slow down when the thyroid does not produce enough of these hormones, which are T3 and T4. So you have to be mindful of that in a diet phase. And when we are assisted, we do have the chance and opportunity to protect that through exogenous use of thyroid. And this is where I want to dive deeper into what I think is appropriate and what isn't appropriate, and what I've seen thrown about recently with some of the doses. And it's probably not a good idea to venture into those doses. And like I always said from the start here, guys, the best and most accurate way to dose your thyroid is always through blood work. If you have no access to blood work, you can use the small little tips and the information I've given you to see if you actually need the thyroid in general, if you are noticing any of the signs of either hypothyroidism, or on the other hand, if you are already using thyroid medication, if you are potentially using too much, through some of the telltale signs that we have gone over in this video. Right, so let's get stuck into it. Thyroid deployment. T3 alone, so T3 monotherapy, so just using T3 alone, in my opinion, is not favorable. My preference would to always be using T4 initially. The main reason why T3 alone is not the best route to go with, in my opinion, is because it can have quite a harsh catabolic effect. And in my opinion, having a lower dose of T4 and T3 will give you more bang for your buck and keep your hormone levels optimized and in range, rather than just supplement with T3 alone. T3 alone, what I have seen previously in blood work, is you require a higher dose of T3 if you are using T3 alone with no T4, and then you actually do experience potentially some muscle loss, as you just simply have to take more to put yourself in an optimal range, which is not the goal here. The goal here is to keep you in mid to upper range and not venture above that, so we do experience any hyperthyroidism sides. And main one that I want to avoid is obviously muscle loss. So what is the best way to start? My preference is to always start with T4. T4 obviously will convert into T3 through the deiodinization process. I might have pronounced that wrong as well, but you can see on the screen if you want to pronounce it, you can let me know how it's pronounced. But once T4 is deiodized to active T3, or you stack T4 with T3 at replacement doses, then you can actually base the correct dosage off your blood work. So if you start initially with T4 and you still see the thyroid levels being somewhat lower, you may then actually introduce T3 just to get them levels a little bit higher. And again, it all depends on previous use. It all depends on how advanced your athlete is. Personally, I think a good start point would be 100 T4 and 25 T3. Personally, working with a lot of athletes, that is what I generally see. A lot of athletes land somewhere in the middle when it comes to replacement dose. And then as the diet goes on, as the athlete gets leaner, the demand and the need for a slight escalation of thyroid hormone is there present as the body weight comes down, as calories get lower. So you may need to adjust the dose as the diet goes along. So you wouldn't just keep the dose stagnant, in my opinion, throughout a diet phase. You may escalate it slightly. However, the max T4 and T3 that I personally think should ever be done was T4 at around 100 to 150 and even 200 in some rare cases, especially if someone has to dig deep with the calories lower. And T3, I personally never ever venture anything above 37.5. And I haven't done in quite some time. There is some very rare cases that I've seen with blood work that may require slightly more, but again, it's very rare cases. And again, that is always done with blood work. So I do always want my clients' blood work to see where they land with the thyroid hormone and thyroid function based off the dosage that they are on, and then adjust the dose based off the blood work always. That's the most accurate way to go, like I keep saying. So if you have the chance to do so, always lean on that tool. So guys, if your goal is to avoid thyroidal axis downregulation as you spend a vast amount of time in a deficit, this is where I would begin with T4 monotherapy, or potentially a low dose of T4 and T3, and then assess through blood work. And then check if the dosages need to change. And again, if you are in a position where you run some blood work and your thyroid hormone is in a very, very good healthy place, you may not actually need any thyroid in place. However, there is a little bit of caveat to this, and that is when growth hormone is in play. I have seen growth hormone down-regulate T4 production, and I will get into a little bit more what you need to look out for, what can actually down-regulate your thyroid hormone a little bit. Now, if I was to give you some numbers, right, what can be needed in combination, it would be 1.5 mcg per kilogram per day of T4. That is generally an average replacement dose. Now, the aim should never be to drive up the metabolic rate through venturing into hyperthyroid doses. I don't think they should ever be implemented within a contest prep setting, unless you are looking to just lose muscle and get lean. Yes, you'll get lean, but at what cost? Always go down the combination route if possible. If the blood work requires it, start with 100 T4, 25 T3, run some blood work a couple of weeks after that, and then adjust the dose based off needs. And then later on in prep, run some more blood work, see what your thyroid is checking at as you get leaner, and potentially adjust the dose based off that. What will impact and downregulate thyroid function? Growth hormone, that is one. I do see that quite often, especially with long-term use of growth hormone. It will downregulate your thyroid function. One supplement that is extremely popular at the moment that most people often forget is L-carnitine. Especially higher doses of L-carnitine may actually impact your thyroid hormone, and they may actually lead to you being less efficient at utilizing your thyroid medication. So you do need to be careful with L-carnitine, especially when it's used at higher doses. It may actually lower your metabolism. I've seen this happen firsthand with a client who was overusing L-carnitine at 1,500 milligrams daily. We lowered this to 500, we changed nothing, and all of a sudden they started to lose weight. So you have to be careful with certain supplements like L-carnitine. And obviously dieting will slow down your thyroid production and will impact it drastically. In some people, in others, not so much. I hope this video helped. Definitely a little bit of an overview with the thyroid function, thyroid deployment, and what you can look out for and how to mitigate it. And last but not least, I want to rewind to the importance of approaching post-diet phase, and I will do a separate video on post-diet approach and how to get out of a diet phase. If you are coming out of a diet phase or a prep after a long diet phase, as a natural athlete, you need to get your food up and you need to get your body weight up. In an ideal world, around 5%, and again, that should be a minimum, females even more, you should be able to add 5% of your total body weight within your first 2 to 4 weeks, if you are legit lean. Some of the other classes that do not require extreme levels of condition like bikini, you probably can aim for 3%. Some of the classes that require more harsh condition, you may actually need to add more. Make sure that you are incrementally increasing your calories without dropping the calories back or pulling back, especially if you have seized or pulled down your thyroid replacement doses, or whatever dosage you was using. If you pull down the doses or remove them, and you bring your calories down, your thyroid function naturally will not recover. And that is the last thing that you want to do. The quickest way to recover your thyroid is through 1, increasing your body weight, 2, increasing carbohydrates, being consistent with your diet, not under eating and then overcompensating. Consistency is the key. Small surplus over time, and prioritizing good quality nutrition, rest, recovery, and keeping your stress levels low. That is the key. So guys, do not make these mistakes. Make sure that you are smart with what you do and how you do it, and get your blood work done regularly and dose appropriately. Do not use thyroid medication as a fat loss agent. It is not a fat loss agent. If there's one thing that you can take away from this video, is not using any thyroid medication as a means or way to drive fat loss, because it is not a fat loss medication. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've taken something away from this video. Thank you, and peace out for now.